Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be going over how to properly send files and collaborate with someone. So a lot of times when I'm collaborating with someone, whether it's a singer, a rapper, or another musician, we'll have some confusion on sending files, what programs to use, and whatnot. So I thought I'd make a quick video on the best programs to use. Everything will be free, and the best practices to use when sending files and collaborating with someone. First thing we're going to be talking about is stems. Now I use FL Studio, but this should be the same process in pretty much every program. So let me just open up any project here. I have a sample here, some drums, a kick, a snare. So we're going to go ahead and just quickly render this out in stems. So when you send stems, it's very important that you send them as waves. Now if you're in FL Studio and you're working with someone else who has FL Studio, you can send a zip loop package, but we'll save that for another video. Now if you're just working with someone and they have another program, or you're sending your song off to get mixed and mastered, it's best to use waves. So we're going to go ahead and click wave and save it wherever you want. Let's just make a new folder real quick. So test render, and we'll save that there. Now this is the important part. So you want to make sure wave is selected, you have the best quality possible, and if you come down here, you're going to get an option called split mixer tracks. Now what this is going to do is it's going to take each of the tracks on your mixer channels and make them their own wave file. So if you have everything properly routed, then this shouldn't be an issue. So we have our sample on track 1. We can actually look at it if we go over here. We have our samples on track 1, this respace on track 2, kick on track 3, hi-hat on track 4, bell on track 5, snare on track 6. This is also on track 5 because it shares the effects. I have another effect on track 8, and then a pluck on track 7. So we should have 8 tracks total, 8 wave outputs plus a master. Now it's important in FL Studio to make sure each of these are named, or else they're just going to come out insert 1, insert 2, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly name these real quick. I'll fast forward it for you. Okay, so I have everything named here. Now let's just assume that we're not sending a mastered sample and that we have no effects on the master, because any effects on the master will not show up in the stems. Now you will have a master output file, but it will be all of these combined. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So we're going to hit export wave. We're going to save it in that new folder that I made. Save. Now we're going to go ahead and select split mixer tracks. Now this option under here, enable insert effects, this may or may not want to be selected depending on what you're doing. If you're trying to send the raw audio with no effects and nothing over here activated, then you'll want to go ahead and select it or deselect it. This will turn off any effects, any reverb, any plugins that you've added into the channel before rendering. But if you have effects that you want to be rendered, which will usually be the case, then you'll go ahead and leave it on, and then you just go ahead and start your render. Okay, now that our render is done, we're going to go ahead and go to that folder. Okay, now that the project is rendered, you're going to have a couple extra files that you may not need. They're going to be labeled current and master. These are going to be the combined outputs of all of these. So if you double click master and play it, you can hear that it's playing everything. So you can hear the snare, the sample, etc. But if we click, for instance, just the snare, then it's just the snare playing. So the master and the current you may want to separate. Usually what I do is make a new folder and call it demo. That way those are in there, and then these are just the stems. So now that you have your stems rendered out, you're going to want to go ahead and send them to whoever is going to be collaborating with you, or perhaps mastering or mixing your song. So the next thing to do is going to be preparing the files to send. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my folder and put it right here. So this is the folder. Now there's a couple ways to do this. If you want to do it quick and dirty and the other person isn't too good with computers and isn't comfortable installing programs, you can just right click and send to compressed folder. Now there is a better way to do this. If you install a free program called WinRAR, you can go ahead and compress things down even smaller and then send it to someone and they can uncompress it. So it makes emailing and sending files a lot easier, especially when you have a multitude of files to send. So if you right click this and you have WinRAR installed, you'll generally get these options. If you don't get these options, I'll show you how to do it in a second. If you do have these options, you'll want to press add to, and then in parentheses it will show the name of the folder. If we click that, it'll go ahead and compress it, and it will output the file wherever the folder is. Now if you don't get that option, that's okay. As long as you have WinRAR installed, it's very easy. So let's go ahead and open WinRAR here. And we're going to go ahead, we're already on our desktop, but if you need to navigate to your desktop, you can just keep clicking up, up, up until it doesn't let you go anymore, and then just double click desktop. Now that we're here, we just want to find the folder. So it's called test render. It's right there. And we're going to right click it and hit add files to archive. You're going to go ahead and name the archive whatever you want. I generally keep it the name of the folder so that way there's no confusion. And just leave everything the way it is. Make sure that your format is in RAR. You can also use zip, as this program does use zip, but RAR saves a lot of space, which makes emailing a lot easier. So once you're done with that, you just hit OK. Great. Now that it's done, we can go ahead and close that, and we have our file right here. So whichever way you do it, whether that's through the right-click menu or using the program itself, you should get a file output that looks something like this. It may not have the same icon, but if you go in the properties, it'll end in .rar. So now you can go ahead and email this to anybody that you need to, and when they get it, they can go ahead and right-click it and hit extract. So let's go ahead and rename this so that way we can extract it to a secondary folder. So now that it's called out, we're going to go ahead, right click, and in this menu, extract to, and then the name of the folder. Now if you don't have this menu, that's okay. We're just going to open WinRAR. It is free, but every time you open it, they will ask you to donate, but you don't have to. We're going to go back to desktop, and we're just going to find the file. So here it is, test render 2. We're going to click extract to. Now this is where you're going to want to choose the place you want to extract it to. So here it's already got the desktop pre-selected since that's where the file was, so that's fine with me. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and then it's going to extract it. Now once it's done, you'll get a folder, and if you open the folder, it'll have everything inside. There's the 2 demo files, and there's the stem files. Takes a second for my computer to load. There you go. So now if we click sample, for instance, there's the sample, bass, there's the bass. So now the person who is working on your project will have access to all the files. They'll be able to make any changes, and it won't affect the quality, and they won't have to open a million emails to get each file. You can just send one file. Now that we've talked about compression and emailing stems, we're going to go ahead and talk about MIDI. So sometimes you're going to want to send the melody or something along those lines, but not the actual sound. For instance, if you have a melody written, but you want to send the MIDI to someone else so that way they can create a sound. It's very simple. In FL Studio, you're going to go ahead and find the MIDI that you want to send and just double click it in the pattern. So either in here, click it, or from the playlist. You're going to want to go up here to the top left, File, Export as MIDI file. Generally, we'll put it on the desktop. Save it as base, since that's what this is. And we're going to go ahead and start a new project, so that way I can show it. So, if you send the MIDI file to someone and you're working in FL or any other program generally, you should just be able to drag and drop it. So this is, the MIDI file will have a different icon depending on which program your computer handles MIDI files. But if you right click and hit properties, it should say .mid or .midi. Now once you have that file located, you can just click, drag it on in, and drag it over to your sampler and let go. Now that MIDI is imported in here, and I can go ahead and add any sound I want. See? So it's that simple. So a lot of times when collaborating with someone, you'll not only want to send the stems, you'll also want to send the MIDIs for each of your instruments. It just depends on the type of collaboration you're doing. There are going to be some instances where you're going to wonder if you should send the project file or not. Whether you're in FL, Cubase, Ableton Live, sometimes people will request the project file. Now, this can be a good and a bad idea for a couple different reasons. To start with, the reasons it can be a bad idea is you will essentially be giving someone complete access and control to the song. So if someone were to be shady, they could take the main ideas of the song, change them just enough to be transformative, and then release their own version. I have also heard instances of people sharing project files, and then the person they shared it with changed all the instrument sounds so that way they use different instruments and just kept all the melodies and whatnot. Sometimes you can catch people when they do this, sometimes you can't, but it's all about protecting your intellectual property. When you send a project file, make sure that you trust the person, but also make sure that the software that you're using is at least close in versions. If someone is on FL Studio 12 and I'm on FL 20, generally the files will work. There are some plugins and some features that may not be present, but they should be able to work around that if you also include the stems. Now in FL, real quick, I just want to show you the zipped loop package. If you click zipped loop package and export, this will not only send the stems, this will also send the project file as well as any samples that you used in the project. So that doesn't mean just the rendered version of your kicks. It will also send the raw version of your kicks, your snares, any samples and instrumentation you used. So it's another reason to be careful when sending project files, is you may give someone too much access, especially if you don't trust them, or if maybe they don't need it. If someone is just mixing and mastering your song, they generally don't need the project file. They should be able to work off just the stems, provided that you've sent them correctly. I really appreciate you guys coming in and watching this. I hope this helps you with your collaborations. If you have any questions or want to get any of the software mentioned, you can check the links below for software, and you can leave a comment and I'll answer any questions that you have.